Hello guys, how are you? And the next subject, insecure password change. I hope that you like the course so far and you will like it even more when we discuss the next bugs. So, a password change is very sensitive functionality and we don't want any kind of weakness out there. We want this functionality to be really secure. And in this video, I'm gonna show you a kind of problem that I see quite often in different web applications. So let me present the story first. The user is logged in the web application, and the session ID of the user is ABC. Of course, this is for simplicity because session ID should be long and unpredictable, right? But this is just for understanding of the problem. Now, we've got also an attacker who got an access to a user's account. If the attacker was able somehow to get access to a user's account, well, then the attacker has his own session ID. For example, XYZ. Again, for simplicity, XYZ, right? Okay, so far so good. So we've got user and attacker. Now, user changes his password in the web application, and when the password is changed by the user, then the session ID equal XYZ should be invalidated as it is then related to the user's old password. Now let me tell you more about this, why it is so important to do this, why it is so important to invalidate that session ID. Because we don't want the attacker to have an access to the user's account after the user's password has been changed, right? This is what we don't want to happen. And if we don't want it to happen, then we have to invalidate the session ID related to old user's password, right? So this is how it works. So what we've got here is a kind of intersection of password change functionality and session management. And now you can see in the story that when you don't do it securely, you will end up in problems. Because when this session ID equal XYZ is not invalidated, right, in our story, then the user is changing his password, but the attacker still has access to the account. So this is obviously wrong and it shouldn't happen, right? So the lesson learned here is like this. When you do testing of password change functionality, you should think about session management as well. And well, the core of the problem that I'm discussing here is broken session management and how broken session management can, lead to some problems, right? Like the attacker still having an access to the user account despite the fact that user has changed his password. I believe that this is clear for you. So now let me jump to the demo and let me show you how you can check whether this problem happens in your application or not. Now in this demo, I'm gonna show you how to test for insecure password change in the context of broken session management. So this is gonna be exactly what I presented in the previous video, but now we've got a practical part, right? So as you remember from the previous video, we've got a legitimate user and we've got an attacker who was able to get access to the user's account somehow. We don't care how, right, in this kind of story. So I've got two browsers here. I've got Firefox, and let's assume that Firefox, this one, is the browser of the user. So you see that I am authenticated. And now I've got also Google Chrome, and so another browser, and let's assume that this is the browser of the attacker who was able to get access to the user's account, right? Now, what I'm going to do as a legitimate user, so I'm going to go back to Firefox, I'm going to change my password, right? So I'm going to click change password, and first I'm asked to enter the current password, so let me do it. And yeah, success. Now I need to provide a new password. And I will click change password. Okay, you clearly see here that my password has been changed. Success. Password changed. This is my browser. And what I expect right now to happen is that the session ID related to my old password should be invalidated, right? So let me right now go to the attacker's browser and let me refresh this page. Let me refresh it. I'm gonna hit enter. I'm gonna hit enter again. I refreshed it twice and I still got an access to this account, right? To David's account. Remember, this is the attacker. So what's the conclusion? I changed the password, but the session ID related to old password, right, has not been invalidated. I changed the password in my account, but the session ID related to my old password has not been invalidated. And I can clearly see it here because I'm still logged in. I'm still logged in the attacker's browser, right? So it clearly presents the problem, right? If the session ID related to my old password was invalidated at the time of password change, then I wouldn't be able to get access to my account in the attacker's browser, right? This is it. Now you can clearly see that this problem exists and nothing has happened. The attacker who got access to the user's account can still have an access to user's account despite the fact that user's password has been changed, right? So this is how it works. I believe it is clear, so let me jump to the next bug.